So now that there's been some time since the Helsinki summit between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin, as a Russian president, um, Americans have pretty much allowed the news of what happened to sink in over the last few days. So, in case you're wondering how the American people are feeling about this summit, whether they're optimistic or they're happy the way the President of the United States conducted himself around a possible foreign adversary, or at least a very powerful foreign leader whom we're not on the best terms with, well, we have a poll just for you guys. Now, let me give you the results of that. Apparently, only about a third of Americans, when asked if they approved the way Donald Trump handled his summit with Putin, only about a third of Americans approved. That's 32%. Not very good. So, very, very sad. Now, that's among that's among American voters. Now, Republican voters specifically, well, how did they feel about this? Well, they thought it was a winner. 68% of Republicans approved of the way that Donald Trump had basically made himself subservient in front of the Russian leader. Wait a minute. I thought you guys cared about strength. I thought you liked Donald Trump because he was going to be strong. He's going to be strong against foreign leaders. Well, you might need to take a little bit of a position of strength towards a leader that kind of influenced our elections or had attempted to hack our elections. Just saying. But no. As far as them subservience to Putin goes, well, they love that. They're like, yes, Putin. God, we love that guy. Well, there actually might be a really good reason why many on the right, especially Trump supporters, are fans of Vladimir Putin and think this went swimmingly. Now, let me go to more results here before we get back to that. Most Americans, about 70%, believe U.S. intelligence assessments that Russia interfered in the elections. The Republicans are more skeptical. Just half say they believe the U.S. intelligence, while 9 in 10 Democrats do. Well, so here's the strange thing about this. 68% of Republicans approve of the way that Donald Trump did not confront Vladimir Putin with the results of the intelligence agency's findings. And yet, just half say they believe in the intelligence. So, yes, there's a significant majority of Republicans that are like, yeah, they meddled in the election. And at the same time, they're like, whatever you do, don't confront Putin about it. We think you're doing a fantastic job saying that it was not Putin or that it was not Russia. It could have been other people. I don't see any reason why it would be Russia. Although, of course, later on, he did say, I misspoke. I totally misspoke. I mean, that's not what I said, even though I absolutely said it. Yeah, okay, man. More Americans see President Trump as too friendly toward Russia than they did last year. This is largely due to an increase in the number of Democrats and independents who say so. More than 3 in 4 Republicans think the president has the right balance of friendliness versus unfriendliness towards Russia. Now, look, friendly versus unfriendly. Okay, so here's the thing, right? Now, if you're going to do diplomacy, which I believe in, you don't necessarily have to be friendly, but it all depends on your definition of friendly, right? So, for example, allowing them to get away with, and I'm not meaning this in a context of let's bomb them, right? But allowing to get away with no consequences for their attempt to basically wreck our democracy. Well, I mean, that's too friendly, right? Again, you don't want to go in with guns blazing or launch missiles or anything like that. No, there's no launch the missiles going on here, okay? Let's not do that. I'm not in favor of that. But there's got to be some sort of consequence, whether it be an economic consequence, which I think is probably the best sort of consequence that we can do. Economic sanctions. Or, making sure that they're unable to sell certain commodities or sell fossil fuels. Hey, that'd be great. And maybe we could steer our world towards more renewables. That would be fantastic. But anyway. Again, diplomacy. I believe in diplomacy, and what we saw during the summit was not diplomacy. I think it was, the case of a monkey giving another monkey his banana as a show of dominance But anyway, now let me get to more of them. Now, Republicans also hold relatively more positive views of Russia than Democrats do, as has been the case since Donald Trump was elected. More Republicans call Russia at least friendly or an ally compared to to the U.S. compared to Americans overall. Now, again, I talked about how there's a little bit of a reason. Now, why is that? Well, just to give you a little bit of a quick synopsis, after the fall of communism in Russia, when it ceased being the USSR, they took a massively rightward turn. So some of the fathers of the modern conservative movement, including Paul Weyrich and some of the other right-wing evangelical Christian leaders, actually started going and cultivating relationships with people in Russia. Why? In order to turn them, of course, into a Christian state. Hey, look, there are these white people who are nationalistic, Russian nationals, and they might be open to Christianity, and especially since they have an Orthodox church there, a Christian Orthodox church. So that's what they did. They went and met with high-ranking Russian officials and began cultivating personal relationships in order to build a religious foundation. So here you have American right-wing Christians and then cultivating relationships with now right-wing Russian Christians. So they have this relationship, and of course, that comes down to even the prayer breakfast, which I was reading an article in the New York Times about that prayer breakfast and how that relates to the recent Russian spy or alleged Russian spy that had been arrested, whose name was unsealed from the 12 Mueller indictments of Russians who helped interfere in the election and things like that. So that prayer breakfast, of course, has been sort of an outgrowth of the Christian conservative nationalist movement in America. And again, they reached out to, and it's not just Russian, they reached out to people in other countries in order to build these relationships as well. And so that's why you have people on the right that actually are very favorable towards Russia, because what Russia is living in now is sort of that Christian right-wing nationalist autocracy that they've always really enjoyed and they've always really wanted here in America. So that sort of explains that. Okay. Anyway, let's go further on this. Now, majority of Americans also expressed at least some concern about Russia interfering in the 2018 elections. In fact, there was a piece of legislation that was a call to protect our elections, to make them a little bit more difficult for foreign hackers or even domestic hackers to be able to change results or get into voter databases. You know what the Republicans did? They voted that down. So they voted down a bill to send funding to the states in order to protect and secure our elections. Huh. Fascinating. I'm just saying. Why would you not want to protect our elections? I thought you cared about election security. Now, you really care if somebody who's an undocumented immigrant supposedly goes to vote. But not protecting, but they don't care if another country, it doesn't matter what the country is, tries to hack into our elections or will attempt to. Fantastic. Well, we know where they stand on that. So now, as far as how to approach Russia, right? Now, most Americans, and I like this. This is a really good piece of the poll. More are in favor of diplomatic pressure over dialogue and cooperation. So none of this suggests that, hey, maybe we should go to war with Russia to punish them. No, that's a ridiculous take. That's one of the worst liberal hot takes I've ever seen. Right? No, we should not go to war with a nuclear power. What we should do is, yes, I believe we should use a mixture of diplomatic pressure and dialogue with the Russian, nation. More so, I think, diplomatic pressure. Because, look, I think that we need to respond with that kind of strength. Sort of a strong stance. Again, not advocating for a military stance. There is a difference. But a strong stance and a strong rebuke of what Russia had actually done to our elections. So I think I'm basically with the majority of Americans here saying we should do some diplomatic pressure because this is unacceptable, what happened in our elections, and we should not allow it to happen again. So that's the poll. Very interesting findings here. Overall, people are not happy with President Trump and his handling of the Russia situation, except for Republicans, which, of course, Republicans love everything that Donald Trump is doing, despite the fact that he contradicts himself and lies pretty much all the time. So there you have it. Hey, everybody. Thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent progressive media, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/TYTNation.